Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at the Friday race of the day at Oaklawn Park. But before we get into the handicapping, wrapping up the year at DRF, we've got this New Year's sale that you want to take advantage of. 15% off everything in the DRF shop. Just go to shop.drf.com and use that coupon code NY2025. So Mike, this Friday race of the day, it's the 9th at Oaklawn. It's an optional claimer, 62,500, non-winners of two other than the allowance condition for these older fillies and mares going the 6 furlong distance, and an interesting field of 10 runners because we've got 7 horses that are all coming out of the same race. So always an interesting race for trip handicappers like you and I to analyze. But the morning line favorite is actually a horse coming out of a different race than all of those, the number 5, Mischievous Gal.
Yeah, sometimes it's not a bad idea either to go for just a new face when you have a bunch of horses that just ran against each other. But I do really feel like the starting off point is probably that December 6th race here at Oaklawn Park. 7 of these horses were in there, David, as you mentioned. I think maybe go back, take a look at that race, see how you feel about it. Of course, none of these fillies running back in here won that race. They got wired by somebody else. But I guess take a look at that one, see how you feel about those horses, and move on.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And I think one of the striking features of this race, Mike, is that there isn't a ton of speed in here. And you do see 3 horses across the track towards the front end on the pace projector, but it's not like any of them are necessarily need the lead types. Actually, quite the opposite. When you look through the past performances of Lover Girl and Backyard Money in particular, they're never on the front end at the first or second call of the races. And Pharaoh's Heart has shown speed in the past, but primarily going longer distances than the 6 furlong. So it is a bit of a murky pace scenario.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. And when you look at it, you look at these horses that are back in here, especially, and again, going back to that December 6th race, not surprising that these horses got wired by somebody in that spot. If you can make the lead here, it could be an advantage. I do think the interesting horse on the pace projector is the 6 Pharaoh's Heart. Because as you mentioned, David, she's probably a little bit better going longer than this. But she can be forwarded. And in that most recent start, that December 6th race, she was off of a long layoff. Didn't get an aggressive ride at all and never got anywhere near the lead.
Well, let's go through this field in post-position order, beginning with one of the horses that is coming out of that common race. For 7 of these are exiting that we mentioned. And if you want to watch a replay of this race, this being the Friday race of the day, you can head on over to the race of the day page on DRF.com and get free formulator past performances for this race. And of course, have access to that replay. The number 1, Always Angel, she was actually the favorite, a lukewarm 3-1 favorite in that December 6th affair. Never really got involved in the race, was just sort of outrun early. Tried to make a move on the turn, seemed to get a little discouraged, then was just outrun through the lane. That was a pretty disappointing effort. I will say, if that race wasn't showing in her past performances, she'd be a major contender in this race because she was running pretty well against tougher company than this over the summer in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's true. That's probably the reason she was favored in that race on December 6th. She was off a layoff there, so I guess if you want to be lenient, David, you just say, she needed one off the layoff there. She just didn't run well at all in that spot. But I think we both realize that she's better than that. You might do a little bit better in the price department this time as well. She's got the rail, but I think she can get the right trip from the inside poster. She's not a slow horse early. I mean, I don't know. She makes plenty of sense to me. I do want to wait and see what kind of price she is, though, because she was pretty bad last time.
The number 2 is Lover Girl, another horse coming out of that December 6th affair. She finished just 1 place ahead of Always Angels in 8th at the end, as the whole field was sort of coming together at the end of that race. Lover Girl was wide, breaking from post 10 that day. Did get into a little bit of traffic right at the very end of that race. I don't know how much it really mattered. She was never going to be in the superfecta or anything like that. And she's just a horse that when you go back through her form, she's run against some tougher company in the past. Horses like Mystic Pleasure and Uppercase that Always Angels actually also faced over the summer, but just wasn't really competitive with those horses and just has to do a little better than she's done before to be competitive with this group.
Yeah, that's how I looked at her too. She didn't get a great trip last time. I'm not sure how much it ultimately mattered. Just picking through her form, I mean, most of her really good races come at Canterbury, where she's, just racing against weaker horses. She did run one really good one here early last year when she was third at a big price Pine Backyard Money, but that's really the only race that she's run that would get me interested.
The 3 is My Friend Amy. She was sort of picking up pieces at the end of that December 6th race and did pass half the field to get up into 5th. But we'll take a look at the replay a little bit later in this preview. But you can kind of see when you do watch the replay, the whole field is kind of coming together like an accordion at the end of the race. So I wonder how much credit you're really supposed to give My Friend Amy for making up a little bit of ground. And her lack of early speed is just a big concern in a race where I'm not sure they're going to be moving that fast up front.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really give her that much credit for passing a bunch of horses late in that most recent start. She ran fine in there, but I think we know where she's going to be early in this race. And she's just, to me, she's just a horse who she's going to need a lot of help here if she's going to come running from last and upset this field.
If the number 4 Chandana could ever get back to that effort that she produced first off the claim for the Randy Morse barn back in the Poinsettia Stakes, December 30th of 2023, when she earned a 79 buyer, just barely losing that stakes event, she'd be a major player in here. And it's not like that's her only good race. She's got plenty of competitive form going back through that 2023 season. The problem is, ever since that first start off the claim for this barn, she's been terrible. I mean, she just has completely lost her form. So she's kind of hard to like off any of her recent races, but she does have that back form to get back to if she could ever get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. She was a long shot. I probably spent way too much time trying to make in this race, Dave. I saw all the same things that you did. I guess if you wanted to try to dress her up, and believe me, I really was trying to dress her up for a long time last night. After that really good effort first off the claim, 3 of her next 4 starts are over wet, sealed racetracks that, listen, maybe she just, at this stage of the game, maybe she just doesn't like those kind of surfaces anymore. If I'm being honest, I wanted to see her run better in that December 6th race last time against a bunch of these horses. She just didn't do a lot in there. I still want to use her somewhere at a big price in here.
The number 5 is that morning line favorite, Mischievous Gal, and she probably will be favored in here because she's at least coming off a couple of victories, where as everybody else in this field is coming off a loss, mostly in that December 6th affair. And she's just a horse who knows how to win races, and she doesn't have to carry her racetrack around with her. She's kind of toured the country over her past several starts, going from Evangeline to Lone Star, Louisiana Downs, Canterbury, now Oaklawn. She's won 3 of her last 4. I do feel like this is probably the toughest field that she's met in any of those races, but I guess you have to respect a horse that's in good form right now.
Yeah, I guess you do, right? I mean, I guess that's kind of the good and the bad of it in a lot of ways, David, because yeah, she wasn't part of that December 6th race. She is in good form into this. She's coming off of a pretty nice winner. I thought she ran pretty well in this race, lost a little position early, but then just came running, and it's just much the best in here with, a couple of recent figures too that really make her competitive in here. I'm not going to knock her. I guess the flip side of that is now you're probably going to have to take a relatively short price on her, as you've already mentioned, against what is probably the toughest field she's ever faced. I'm not thrilled with that.
I think one of the most difficult horses to assess in this race is the number 6 Pharaoh's Heart, because when you go through her form, it's pretty clear that she might be the most talented horse in this race when she's on top of her game. The question with her is, can she get back to her best form now as a new 8-year-old? She's a horse who has been around for a long time, has had plenty of substantial breaks in her career, and she's always sort of come back to her best form. But, we'll see if she can do it again now that she's really getting long in the tooth. And also the 6 furlong distance, because she has needed to start off a layoff in the past. So I can be a little bit forgiving of her off the board finish in that December 6th affair, where, as I'm sure you'll note, Mike, she didn't have the best trip in that race. But now they're coming back at 6 furlongs again, and I would just prefer to see her going a little bit longer than this.
I'm worried about the shorter distance with her too. But as we've already talked about, Dave, we looked at that pace projector. There's not a ton of speed in here. And I do think she's fast enough, if she breaks better this time, to just come out of there running and just get right up on the pace in this race. I sort of agree with your assessment too, that I feel like if everybody just shows up here and runs their A race, I think her A race might be the best one. And I'm just going to kind of give her a pass for that most recent start. The long layoff, she didn't break sharply, took a bump, and then Camacho just kept her, very, very wide around the track, not getting aggressive with her. She had the look of a horse there who really needed a race off the long layoff.
Trying to find an interesting price horse in this race. Maybe the number 7 Midshipman's Dance could fit that bill, because if you just kind of take her career apart, she sprinted twice in the first 2 starts of her career, won both of those races, closing from off the pace. Then they immediately stretched her all the way out to a mile and 16th in the Honeybee, and she didn't run that badly, but she just couldn't really produce a finish in 2 subsequent route starts thereafter, with layoffs after each of them. And maybe she's just a horse who's wanted to sprint all along, and they never should have tried to play around with making her go the 2 turns. she's getting back to a sprint here off some pretty poor efforts. I just wish that if I was going to take a shot with her, that there would be a little bit more pace for her to close into, because it's a little tough to see the winning trip for her.
I think she's going to need a big pace in here too. And I'm not sure she's going to get it. It makes a lot of sense to just bring her back to sprinting. Finally, I'm with you. I'm not sure what took them so long to do that. She had the look of a closing sprinter early on. She never stretched out effectively. This is probably what she wants to do. She's lightly raced. She's got enough ability, you would think, to go with these horses. Now she gets Lasix for the first time. I mean, I thought she was easy to make a case for. I don't know if the 15-1 morning line is going to hold, but if it does, I could use this horse.
The number 8 is Backyard Money. She kind of split the field in that December 6th affair, chasing the pace that was set by the eventual winner, Connie K, before fading a little bit at the end that day. That was not one of her best efforts, but I will say it was a race that was sort of falling apart. They did set a legitimate pace. So if I want to take anybody out of that race, I'm willing to upgrade the horses that were at least involved early, as opposed to those that were just picking up pieces at the end. So Backyard Money kind of fits into that former category. And then when you look past that December 6th race, she's just faced horses that are better than these, going 2 starts back, 3 starts back, 4 starts back, where she was meeting horses like St. Benedict's Prep, Zeitlos, Mighty Madison, horses that are capable of running buyers in the upper 80s or low 90s, and just feels like she really fits well against this field, and she projects to get a good trip given the tactical speed that she possesses.
Yeah, saw all those same things too. I mean, she's just been, her overall form might not look that great, but she's been in some really, really tough races. And so I don't think she's as as inconsistent as it looks like she is on paper. She just, listen, she races for D. Wayne Lucas. He's just going to run her, whether it feels like the right spot to run her in or not. This feels like the right spot to run her in. I didn't love her performance last time. I do think she should have run a little bit better than that. That being said, you know, she ran fine in there. She's going to get a good trip in this race, and she's probably going to be a fair price.
The number 9 is Dealing Justice, and we'll finally take a look at the replay of that December 6th affair that we've been talking about. She achieved the best result of anybody coming out of that race into this one. She's the horse coming up the inside at the end, and she's just barely going to fall short of catching the winner, Connie K, who was setting the pace. Watching this race, Mike, I kind of found it hard to believe that she was only going to lose this race by a neck, because it never really looked like Dealing Justice was doing that much running, and the race just kind of came back to her at the end for her to lose by as narrow a margin as she did there. She got a 74 buyer, which is the best that she's produced recently for this bar, and she's obviously a horse that had done better for different stables in the past. She's just been big prices in all of her recent races, and now she's probably going to be a much shorter price coming off her best effort in a while, and probably not the best time to hop on the bandwagon.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, they got her 7-2 on the line for this after going off at almost 25-1 against all these same horses last time. And then, as you've already sort of alluded to, when you go back and watch that full replay too, it's pretty rare that you're in that sort of inside pocket chasing trip where you just never have any traffic. I mean, there was nobody near her all through the turn or through the stretch down on the inside. She had plenty of room down there, and it never looked like she was going to get there. But she did wind up getting for a second. I mean, I don't think she's impossible in here, David, but I would not be taking that morning line price on her.
And then rounding out the field on the outside is the number 10 Tapperture's Lady, who is going to be a long shot, a Nebraska bred who's actually coming out of a race that took place in Nebraska. I don't see that too often, coming in to Oaklawn Park. She does have one prior start at Oaklawn, going all the way back to May of last, or I should say earlier this year, where she ran okay against some pretty good horse in Hall and Ice, picking up some pieces at the end. That's arguably one of the best efforts she's ever put forth. The problem is it's still way too slow to make her a factor in here. So she's another one that lacks early speed and is just going to need some help.
Yeah, didn't know that she was going to be, even with this pace not being fast, I didn't know that she was going to be fast enough to keep up with some of these horses early. And obviously she hasn't run a race yet. She's lightly raced, so maybe she can improve, but she hasn't run a race yet that's going to make her competitive with these horses.
Let's throw up our picks for this Friday race of the day at Oaklawn. And I think we've got pretty similar ideas here, Mike, seeing the top two horses just in a different order. You put Pharaoh's Heart on top, and as we were kind of alluding to, she's the horse that's run some of the best races of any of these. Just can she do it second off the layoff at this distance?
Yeah, 6 furlongs, the main question for me, but I do think she's fast enough to get forwarded here. And I just really felt like she needed that start off the layoff last time, David. So I'm going to take her on top. Again, I probably spent way too much time trying to make the 4, and I wound up putting her third. You know, as long as I looked at her, I probably should just took a shot with her on top at a huge price, but I'll try to get her in there somewhere.
And I put the logical number 8 Backyard Money on top. I just project her to get a really good trip in this race. And while I don't love her last race, she's just faced better in so many of her other recent starts. I think she fits this race pretty well. So the number 8 Backyard Money for me, the number 6 Pharaoh's Heart for Mike in the Friday race of the day, race 9 at Oaklawn. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.